Hey, today on the Cooligans, we're going to be talking to Pablo Maurer of The Athletic.
That's right. We're going to go over all the hot gossip in MLS. Who's getting fired? Who's getting hired?
What's Wayne Rooney up to?
Ooh, ... There today on the Cooligans. Yeah, baby!
Look at us. It's like Paul Rudd on Hot Ones. It's like,
Who would have thought it?
Hey, look at us.
Not us. Yes, us.
No, man, we're excited to be here. Welcome for tuning in. Thank you for tuning in again.
Welcome for tuning in.
That also counts. I think that sort of works.
You pulled an Alexis.
As
I'm not
a
going to lie to
sentence,
you.
a little bit. Thank you for tuning in. My name is Christian Polanco.
That's right. I'm Alexis Guerrero.
All right, we are your favorite stand-up comedians that host the funniest soccer show that you have ever seen in your life.
That's what you're watching right now. Aren't you excited?
Exactly.
You should be. But it's not just that.
It's not just that. It's
No,
not just
it
that.
is that though.
Yes,
but
it
it's
is.
not just that because there's so many other things. One of which happens to be the gulliest soccer show you've ever seen in your life.
Okay, and I think our guest today might be one of the gulliest guests that we've ever had. He's been on the show before. He's been on the podcast.
He's been on our show before. We've hung out with him in person.
Yes.
We've met him in his city. He's met us in our city. And to this day, every time I talk to him, I'm still not sure he's my friend. You know what I mean? And that's what I love about him. That's what I love about him. Because you never know exactly where you sit with this guy. You know what I mean? He's legitimately one of the people, when I say like American soccer, it has like the dopest people in it. And this is one of the guys that I think accentuates that. Absolutely love this dude.
Yes.
He's one of the best. He's a writer for The Athletic. He used to be a mechanic, and now he's a full-time soccer writer. And he'll tell you your car is trash like he did to mine, okay? But he could also do amazing, amazing writing when it comes to whether it's DC United or anything in the league or in American soccer. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for the one, the only, Pablo Maurer.
Hello, Pablo.
How's it going?
Yes,
There it is.
That's the energy we want from Pablo. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Alexis. We are friends for now. Just,
For now. Ominous.
Yeah,
We have the next that goes here.
I think because Pablo, you are, I've told you this before, but you are one of the funniest people in like soccer Twitter. You're as funny as a lot of the comedians that we know, and we're not particularly used to finding that amongst soccer journalists, right? To have a sharp
stiffs.
a sharp wit and real cynicism, and I think that's why Alexis and I don't know if you like us, right?
So really, we brought you on today's show to find out, do you like it? No, I'm joking. But this is a big moment for you. You've now gone, what? Is this a full season as a full-time writer?
Yeah, just finished. I guess my first full MLS season was an interesting experience. That's about all I got on that. But yeah, it's been a long year. I'm ready for a few days off, I guess.
Have you noticed that one of the things that, was brought up to us when we started doing a soccer podcast, and we said, we're going to try to maybe focus most of it on American soccer. People are like, there's not going to be enough stories. You're never going to be able to fill an entire podcast with just that. And we've had episodes that are 4 hours long, okay? Like there's more, there's so many incredible stories. There's so many behind the scenes stuff going on. How have you found it now as a full-time writer? Have you been able to have you struggled looking for stories, or do you have so much that you got your off season already planned out?
No, I mean, I've always been I think a writer. I might focus more on the human aspect of the game or on players. And there's no shortage of stories on any team. And you have, 18, 20, 25, whatever people, on a roster of staff, that sort of stuff. With MLS, it's such a weird league, so many weird mechanisms, so much off-season sort of movement that there's definitely no shortage of stuff to write about. I mean, you could, the equivalent of your 4 hour, I could write a 4 hour podcast every day about some stupid, obscure thing in this league, So I think I think we're fine. As long as the league doesn't fold, we have material indefinitely.
Okay, and there's been a couple of great articles that you've written in just the last couple months that I have loved, and we'll get through them throughout the show. But I want to start with one that you wrote recently, titled "Inside the Confidential 2016 Study That Provided the Blueprint for MLS's Modern Era." And this was great. Even before I read the article, I read the comments of you on Twitter of people responding to it who probably didn't even read it, but I love how mad they were at you for it. But this is a very interesting thing, and if I'll sort of paraphrase. I mean, basically, the article is about a research study that MLS hired a company to basically give it some direction on where it should take the league. But this is a very confidential report that you got your hands on, and you and Paul Tenorio.
Yeah, you gave it to us. I remember that, right? Yeah, obviously the Boston Consulting Group study is I would say, pretty well-known study that MLS ordered in 2015. It's basically like a top-to-bottom kind of examination of all its business operations, their competitive model, their broadcast product, every single aspect of the league. And the Boston Consulting Group, they came back with, this 250-page summary of basically what the league needed to do if it wanted to become a viable television product, or to compete with Liga MX and other leagues globally as far as quality goes. So it's pretty fascinating because it's sort of become the roadmap for MLS in the past. It's been 3-4 years now, and the study runs through, I want to say, 2021. So in a way, it probably continue to be a roadmap. Definitely when I got my hands on it, I was like a kid in a candy store. I mean, it's full of so much closely guarded, kind of confidential stuff that you don't typically see when it comes to MLS. They present a pretty polished image of themselves generally, so it's interesting to just kind of look at the raw data sometimes.
What did you think when you read it, knowing sort of it's 2016 study? You read it, I'm assuming, in 2019. So you've gotten to sort of see what has come about and what hasn't. Some of the things that you referenced in the article is that they didn't fully follow the guidelines of the BSCG or BCG group's sort of synopsis. What do you think from reading it?
Yeah, I think they followed quite a few of their suggestions. I think as far as the competitive model, something I definitely did. This study definitely directly led to the introduction of TAM, which was sort of the BCG gave them a few options as to how they could improve their product. One of them was just like taking the reins off completely. The clubs, the league's bigger teams, obviously let them just spend willy-nilly and pound the smaller spending teams into the ground. And there were a couple other options. The MLS, like I said, they sort of chose a hybrid of those. They said, well, we'll use this mechanism to inject this money into these like mid-tier roster spots to increase the overall quality of teams, while not raising the salary cap tremendously, not imposing a floor spending wise. So I think undoubtedly the quality of the league has come a long way in the past 3 or 4 years. But you could also make an argument that the league didn't follow some of the most aggressive course of action in the study. That's something that could have accelerated that growth of quality and had MLS teams competing with Liga MX and other teams a lot faster. And then other areas of the study, scheduling. Like they wanted the BCG recommended shortening the schedule, which MLS did in their own way. Not exactly the recommendation. They didn't follow sort of the recommendation of the BCG to a T. TV product, they've incorporated some of the recommendations. So it's fascinating to me to see like what they do going forward, because there's even more drastic measures that the study recommends that they haven't implemented yet. So we'll have to see what happens.
All right. We'll be back with Pablo after this.
we're back with Pablo Maurer of The Athletic. We're talking about that amazing article that he wrote regarding the 2016 consultancy study, I guess you would call it, from the Boston Consulting Group. So, Pablo, there was a bunch of stuff that they obviously did. You talked about how a lot of the article focused on position 4 through 11, number 4 through 11, and sort of getting the middle and the meat of that sort of lineup to be a bit higher quality. And it seems a lot of those things are coming true. Is there one thing from the article that you wish you could have instantly instituted that you think would make the league better?
That's an interesting question.
Are you surprised that I asked an interesting question?
It seems like you may have actually read the article, which is shocking. I'll tell you this: like, I'm not convinced it would work, but I'm fascinated by the studies and recommendation on the MLS schedule, which would be this: start the season at the beginning of February, season runs through the middle of August. MLS Cup gets played at the end of August, right? So the entire season is over in, what is that, like 6 months or something like that, 5 months? You immediately then in October play an intra-league tournament with Liga MX. The entire US Open Cup gets moved and played in February. And they also recommended really highlighting the Open Cup and CONCACAF Champions League, which I really like. I love both those tournaments. And they do all this just to sort of maximize MLS's exposure on television, right? Because in the middle of the summer and towards the end of the summer, there's nothing really that they'd be competing with, especially during weekdays. So I don't know if I'd recommend that. I don't know that there's any one thing in the study that I was like passionately in favor of, but I think that's a pretty off-the-wall, interesting idea to explore,
Yeah, it does. That one, when I saw that, the soccer fan in me is like, no, that's ridiculous. And then you imagine that the players would be insanely overworked. You would have to have three game weeks so often. But when I read it, it felt like one of those things that was like, oh, they hired a company to introduce this report and make the suggestion. And because all these other things sort of have happened that are in this report, it's like, oh, is this a possibility? Does MLS feel like if we do this, this will help improve the product and help grow the sport in the country, regardless of how many players are injured because of it, right?
Well, players are going to die. But again, that just frees up more TAM,
The thing that's really fascinating to me too is you read the study and it's just like, it's obviously, it looks at MLS through the business prism, right? But it lacks all this soccer specific knowledge. I mean, it really is. Somebody, maybe a commenter on The Athletic said something which made me laugh because I had the exact same thought, which was it felt a little bit like it was written by the Bobs from Office Space. Like they just pulled Don Garber into the office and were like, what would you say that it really is that you do here, Don? To me, it was like, that was the one, there's a slide that I Twitter that's just hysterical. It says like, it's got columns of photographs and on the left it says, the EPL and the NFL are this, and it's a photograph of U2. And then it says, MLS is this, and it's a photograph of the Weekend. And it just like, it was so obviously assembled by like a 48-year-old dude who is completely out of touch. Like,
without a doubt.
Asked his 14-year-old like who's hot right now.
Yeah. And
there's like, I don't know, I hate you, Dad. Like The Weekend, whatever.
It's a guy who tried to connect with his kids and then gave up and made the meme instead.
There was that new artist, The Weekday, the other day. It was great.
Well, Pablo, you also written a couple articles about DC United. You live in the DC area, and you've been covering the team for a long time, and you are one of these people who I look to, especially when it's things DC United related. Oh, speaking of this, we were at MLS Cup and we were at a party and bumped into Dwayne De Rosario. And I asked him, because you had told this amazing story about asking the wrong question to Dwayne De Rosario. And
this was also 2 a.m.
This is 2 a.m., but he was like,
so we're all at a nightclub just partying, and all of a sudden Christian's like, hey, I got got this great question for you.
You remember this guy?
Remember when you were pissed off by this
I
reporter?
don't remember me. You remember me? I'm curious.
He did. He was like, I was like,
you.
oh, Pablo Maurer, he asked you this question. He's like, yeah, I remember that guy. And he was like, yeah, well, I take my job very seriously. That's what he said to me.
He said, thank God that guy's out of the business, and we didn't have the heart to tell him you're now full time.
But you,
Has he been on your show yet?
no, he has not. But
We're trying.
We invited him.
We're efforting.
Yeah, get this man on your show and ask him about whether he feels that his legacy is truly appreciated.
We actually talked about that at the club.
that's what Alexis does at nightclubs. He asks girls like, "Yo, what do you think your legacy is gonna be when you leave this
Do you
nightclub?"
think your legacy is going to be appreciated? Yeah, show more midriff. You know, that's what I'm doing at the club. I'm just letting the belly hang out. You know what I mean? I'm just giving advice. You know.
Anyway, I wanted to ask about what happened in 2019 to DC United, because Lucho Acosta, the article about him as well, about just like, where his season went, his failed move to PSG, how that affected the team, how that, how did that affect him? We'll start there, and then we'll talk about Rooney maybe in the next segment. But what happened? What happened to DC United?
Oh yeah, what happened?
I mean, I think it would be like if you got invited to audition for Saturday Night Live, and like you get there, you go through the entire audition, the contract's on the table, and then I don't know, Fubo, whoever is like, we want $20 million for Polanco's.
Oh, okay.
And so Lord Michael is like, no, all right, go back to the Cooligans show.
Yeah.
And you might have a hard time bouncing back from that immediately.
Yeah. I mean, I'll say this: I will never forgive Fubo. All right, I'll say it right now.
yeah, exactly. Right. The show will have a very different tone. No, I think Lucho really struggled with that the first half of the year. I think between that and teams just sort of figuring out Lucho and Wayne's dynamic and putting numbers on Lucho, they were disconnected very quickly. And DC United, for one reason or another, is not the most complex or deep team tactically. So they became pretty easy to play against. It's pretty straightforward, I think, what happened to them. I think by the end of the year, they were so punchless offensively that, they essentially kind of regressed into their old style of play from a couple of years ago, where it was just like kind of destroy the game at all costs and defend and try and spring an occasional counter, but it never seemed to work. And obviously the game against Toronto, the playoff game, was like it was one of the most surreal things I've ever seen as far as watching TFC, hang 4 on them in like 10 minutes in extra time. It was just like a total gut punch for those guys. So it was an interesting year for sure.
It seemed as the Flow Sports contract went, so did the team, and both into a dumpster.
DC United were just like a red error card by the end of the year.
It said buffering. It said buffering during extra time in the playoffs. It just constantly buffering. When you look at a player like Lucho Acosta, rumor is that Rooney's going to bring him out to Derby County. Do you think that it's going to be difficult for DC to try to bring in players at that level, or do you think they're going to go all in on a huge name? Like, what comes next? Because how does Ben Olsen still have a job?
That's a fair question, I think.
Simple question.
That one I'm not going to touch. As far as the players to bring in, no. I mean, I don't think. Look, bottom line is that Wayne Rooney is sort of impossible to replace, right? Because he's not just a named player. I would argue that globally, outside of Cristiano, Messi, and Zlatan, Wayne is probably the most recognizable soccer player in the world. I mean, there are certainly players who are much better, playing for much better clubs, but Wayne has this sort of mega celebrity that like maybe 4 or 5 players in the world possess, right? So you're not going to get that. You're not going to get I don't think you're going to get like a Mesut Ozil either, which is hilarious that he was ever even connected to DC United. Because I don't know how that rumor. I think that the team was eager to let that rumor sort of percolate, but in reality, it just was, they were speaking to his business people because the guy is opening a coffee shop in Audi Field, no joke. So,
The transfer rumors are just about beans.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We're currently roasting the contract. I think it's like when you break up with your girl and you like DC United went so far as to like hire someone on back pages that looked real hot to try to be like, look, everything's working out just fine. Didn't need you. And she's like, I'm here for the coffee.
Yeah,
You're like,
that rumor came out the day that season ticket renewals went out, which makes me really crack up too. Yeah, but no, I mean, I don't think they're going to replace Wayne with a similar player. I think statistically they've probably already replaced him with Ola Kamara. You know, I think the team's in the market for like a 10. You know, obviously they're going to need to replace you know, a couple of pieces, and I think they might also view Lucas Rodriguez, who's another Argentine. Who currently plays in the wing, maybe as Lucho's replacement centrally too. But you know, it's you just never know with DC United, man. Every offseason is just a total crapshoot. You know, so. Yeah.
But Ben Olsen will always be back. He ain't going nowhere.
That's right. You don't need a statue of Ben Olsen because he's just there.
Right. We'll be back with Pablo after this.
We're back with Pablo Maurer of The Athletic. Now, Pablo, you also wrote another article about gambling with MLS, which is something that you don't really hear too much about.
Exactly. Pablo doesn't really talk about his gambling problem that much.
That's right. I mean, we all know it's there. We've tried to have interventions before, but he just keeps driving half car, half pickup away from us. But gambling in MLS, the article, I just love how many times he's covered his face during this video. The article itself talks about how it's relatively easy or sort of like an open spot for gamblers to maybe make a little bit of money. I don't understand too much about gambling. I only know that's why I lost my family. But other than that, what is it specifically about MLS that you think makes it sort of ripe for the picking for gamblers?
I mean, to be clear, I don't necessarily think that. It's just what everybody all the gamblers I talk to, seem to think it is. The general consensus was that because nobody cares, I'm just going to put it that way, because like nobody abroad watches MLS, because there's a lack of sort of raw data on the league that's easily accessible. The lines on MLS are sometimes ridiculous. I mean, like I think somebody gave me an example once where, it was like TFC was playing a regular season game in between two CCL games, and they had, they had openly said to the media in Canada and the U.S., "Hey, look, we're going to play reserves in this regular season game. We're going all in on the CCL thing." Well, betting houses in the UK or abroad don't take that sort of stuff into account. So they still had, I think, TFC as heavy favorites. To them overseas, they're just like the defending champions, most expensive roster in MLS history. Obviously, TFC got slaughtered.
I remember that game. Yeah.
The Union would be a good example this year. They would have, Marco Fabian at really, favorable or unfavorable odds to score, saying that he has a high chance of scoring when in reality, he was not even in the 18 for half the games. They would, while the PK taker for Philadelphia would be, at 12-1 or something like that, something that's, could make you a lot more money, So that's what I gather. It's just because nobody cares, it's easier to bet on the league.
Yeah, while I was reading the article, I'm like, why have I not gambled all my money on Major League Soccer?
Yeah,
because I know a little bit. I know enough to if I saw some of those odds, I'm be like, oh my God, this is where it pays off for British people to hate Major League Soccer or call it a retirement league, because we can make all this money from the bookmakers. You know what I'm saying?
A gambler can make more money than a rookie in MLS. Which is pretty
Don't
good.
encourage it, Alexis.
Yeah. But here's my big thing is, if I saw those odds, I think, oh, they know something I don't. You know what I mean? I wouldn't be as confident, but I guess that's what makes me not a gambler. You know what I mean? So I guess a little different. Was there anything that you think stuck out specifically about the difference between gambling in MLS and gambling in some other sports? Is this something that you think is going to pick up even more?
Well, I mean, definitely as in the U.S. because you have municipalities like D.C. where they just legalize sports betting, and like written into the law is something that gives each of D.C.'s professional teams, the Wiz, the Nats, all that stuff, the ability to have a sports book in their stadium, right? Which is something that's common, I think, in the UK, and to not have another sports book within like a quarter mile of the stadium or something. So I think, yeah, I mean, you might see some DC United fans, like popping out at the 15th minute to place some sort of a bet on a goal score or, the end result or something like that. I would never do it, man. I just I have a pretty addictive personality with this kind of stuff. So I think I would lose all of my money if I tried to bet on MLS.
Addictive personality. You don't say. You have a jacket from a soccer jacket from the 70s and 2 bikes behind you. Addictive personality, you don't say.
Yeah, I mean, I know, like you said, I drive a half car, half pickup truck. It seems like a natural fit. It's not going to happen. You're the one in a Champion hoodie and a Carhartt. You look like you belong at an OTB right now, Alexis.
Buddy, everything you just said is a hipster reference because now even OTB hats are hipster stuff. I'm trying to look hip, okay? I'm trying to make sure the kids think like, hey, Alexis knows what he's talking about.
OTB is off-track betting. It's like the smoky room you go to
They're
where
shut
you're not
down.
even at the horse track.
There's a company named, they're shut down. A company named Honest Living is selling OTB branded hats for like $150 right now. I'm not making that up.
Okay. You have to be an old Greek man to purchase one.
Yeah, dude. I remember walking by OTBs and little kids were looking in it to see if their dads were there. That's how sad OTBs used to be.
And the sad part is they never were.
No. I used to tap them on the shoulder and be like, there ain't in there, kid. I just walked in there myself.
One of my roommates in Chicago way back in the day, like 15 years ago when I lived there, she was a waitress at an OTB. And let me tell you, this is she's the horror story she had coming home.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
That's not a job you apply for. That's a job you find yourself
No,
at.
that's a job you're forced to do.
Who's ordering at an OTB? Can I see your menu? Has never once been said at an OTB.
Trust me, there's cigar ashes in all of the food.
Yeah. No, we don't accept credit cards. We don't trust you. You're at an OTB.
All right, we'll be back with Pablo with some more after this, guys. All right, we are back with Pablo Maurer of The Athletic. Pablo, I wanted to talk to you about your opportunities that you've had to interview Wayne Rooney, right? You were talking about how much of a megastar he was. I don't think there's too many American journalists that have gotten the chance to sit down and talk to him. What was sort of your experience and sort of working with him? And also, you wrote a great article about his liaison or handler, Rory, right? Rory Moleda, if I'm not mistaken. And what? Why did you want to write that story? And also, your relationship with working with Wayne Rooney. What was that all like?
Wayne is he earned a reputation, I think, in the States, and to an extent, it's one that followed him here as a pretty down-to-earth dude. And my interactions with him over, a year and a half, whatever it was, sort of served that narrative well. I think he, he was relatively generous with his time, a really nice guy for the most part. I think to Wayne, he was really just relieved to be at least a little bit shaded from like the tabloidy stuff in the UK. I mean, even when the stuff that happened in Vancouver that got in the tabloids, the Rebecca Party stuff, like nobody on the beat here in DC, I think, really had any interest in asking him about it, which is, I think, a huge relief for somebody who's like been in the UK glare, for that long. As far as the piece of Rory goes, I mean, I think it's just a fascinating insight. Rory's somebody who I've known, in passing at least for years at the club. Super hard worker who works with team operations. He schedules like team travel, stuff like that, the hotels. And his life sort of flipped upside down. I mean, Rooney's agent and the club essentially asked him to be Rooney's minder, drive him everywhere, and the kid I mean, I can't even imagine just step into that level of sort of being associated with a celebrity. It's like seems like a real life sort of entourage situation. So it was definitely I was interested in getting that perspective on Rooney. I mean, so much has been written about him, but certainly not from the perspective of somebody who associates that closely with him and stuff.
How would you assess, Rooney's time with DC United? It seems to me like it's two big highlights, and then from an outsider's point of view, it seems like not much else. But you had a different relationship with him, and you sort of, especially being in that market. What do you think? How would you assess his time with DC United?
I mean, I think for the most part, it's on the field was successful. I mean, he scored, whatever it was, 25, 30 goals, a bunch of assists. He had like you said, a couple of highlight reel worthy moments, the goal from half field, and then his tackle and assist to Acosta. It's undeniable that he raised the profile of United globally and sort of got a bunch of eyeballs on the team. But it is sort of, I think fans are left with a bittersweet taste because it's just more of the same shit, to be honest with you, as far as their playoff performance goes. They got bounced out in the opening round for the third time in a row. And, once Wayne announced his departure to Derby, it did feel like he was tuned out a little bit. You know what I mean? Like on the field, off the field, everywhere. He missed a lot of games, obviously, the games he played. He and most of his teammates played pretty poorly. So it's like confusing kind of legacy to parse through, because the highs were so high, and the lows were just at the end, just what's even going on, So
it did.
So yeah, it's something maybe in 4 or 5 years we'll have a better mirror on it.
Yeah, it did feel as soon as that announcement came, once the kind of Lucho Costa saga happened, the mood amongst the team, just something was gone, something was missing. So
yeah, we also just want to point out it had nothing to do with our live show there.
No, the live show that we did at DC United was, I think they drew the game that we.
That's right.
So we got them a point. So I think that's,
if anything, we
contributed
you're
that.
welcome. Pablo was there.
One of the sort of exclusive things I wrote on Rooney was I had, and this is just I act like too cool for shit sometimes, but I sat down with Rooney for 30 minutes and talked to him about his free kick technique, right? We sat with my laptop and he picked apart a couple of kicks for me. And, that's something that that's just cool. I might tell my kids about that someday. But, I'm bringing this up because in that piece, I wrote that he was on pace to shatter the MLS record for free kick proficiency. And after I wrote that piece, he never scored a free kick ever again.
I hate what happens is that we have someone on the show, and then all of a sudden the career just spirals out of control.
Yeah. At least it's not just us. Pablo is also the EA cover curse.
Yeah, the Madden curse.
Yeah. I'll get fired next week, I think.
Well, one other thing I wanted to ask you about was your Twitter thread for the "We'll Be Right Back." Your "We'll Be Right Back" Twitter thread. So maybe a lot of people don't know about this.
Some Adult Swim fans out there.
But Pablo has compiled one of the greatest Twitter threads of MLS. They look like little teaser commercials, but it's MLS related
and they're very MLS-y moments.
Yeah, MLS-y moments. Which is why I appreciate Pablo is because you can make fun of the league that you care about. You're not just trashing it or whatever. You can be self-deprecating, and that's what is amazing. But there's I don't know if we'll be able to show it on the show per se, but it's one of the best Twitter threads you will see. That and the nutmeg thread from Zito.
Yeah.
These are the two top tier Twitter threads that you need to make sure you follow.
Yeah, that's the top flight when it comes to Twitter threads.
Why did he start doing that?
Yeah.
I'm curious.
I don't remember. I mean, obviously, I love the Eric Andre show, right? I mean, I think people think that I came up with that gimmick or something. It's so clearly lifted from Adult Swim. Sometime last year. I mean, I think it's one of those things where it's coping. It's a coping mechanism where, if I have to watch like all these midfielders dribble directly into the ad boards. Like I gotta make light of it somehow. I mean, who are we kidding? It's like, isn't it like one of the reasons why you like watching MLS? You know what I mean? Like it's like it's a little rough around the edges, right? Like, yeah, I would obviously prefer the quality to be higher, but if it's not going to be higher, let's at least enjoy it. Like,
MLS is the friend that you like having around, but not just because, but when he goes to flirt with a girl at the bar, he's going to trip and take out a waiter with a bunch of beers. It's just going to happen. You know, you got to stick around for it. It's a lot of fun.
All right. Well, Pablo. Oh, go for it.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, Pablo, thank you so much. Pablo, no, I'm done. I will not speak anymore. Thank you so much for joining us, man. You're great. We love your work.
Incredible writing.
Yeah, you've written for a lot of publications, but you are currently with The Athletic, and you do amazing work. You guys, I love the tag teaming now. There's a lot more like,
the collabs.
It's like...
It's The Athletic collabs. It's Pablo X Paul.
But yeah.
You guys are doing...
Maurer X Mario X Stage Goal. Everybody's been waiting for that collab,
You guys are doing great work. Make sure you follow Pablo on Twitter at MLSist. He crushes it on there. Very, very funny. And we appreciate you, man. So thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
Thanks for being here, man.
I appreciate it, guys. Take care.
All right, we'll be back with more after this. Right.
I was going to do it.
Oh, we didn't discuss it beforehand. But no, I wanted to say thank you, Pablo, for joining us on the show. That was great.
That's what I was going to do. So now I'm not going to say that.
We're not going to thank him twice.
Ew. No, Pablo's the best. He's one of those people that when I know he's going to be at an event we're at, I'm excited.
Exactly. Fun dude.
Even though he snitched on me for dipping my cookies. I dip Maria cookies in my beer. And again, I'm Cuban. We dip stuff in our drinks. It's our culture.
In beer, though?
Yeah, all right.
Yeah, even the Cuban in the room is like, but
I guess he's not that Cuban then, huh? All right, I guess we found another one.
Okay.
Off to Puerto Rico with you.
It's more disgusting than Cuban. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, sometimes they go hand in hand.
So a couple things we want to talk about today before we wrap up are Eintracht Frankfurt, right? We talked about the team.
We were there.
We were just there a couple weeks ago, and great win over Bayern Munich.
Sometimes when we're there, we inspire, right? But sometimes when we leave behind
some residue,
just a little gully in the air. And I think this is one of those situations where that happened because if you didn't see it, I forgot who they were playing. Who were they playing?
They were playing Freiburg.
They were playing Freiburg, right? And one of the players from Eintracht Frankfurt, David Abraham, is running, and the ball seems to have gone past the manager for Freiburg.
Yes.
So what do? You go around him, right? But then all of a sudden, David Abraham remembered us.
He's like, and
he was like, remember when those guys threatened to fight our mascot, Attila, the eagle? Maybe I should be a little gully in this situation.
It's like, bring that kind of energy.
Yeah, just to get the boys together.
Exactly,
A bonding experience. So he dips the shoulder and completely takes out the manager of Freiburg.
Yeah, so manager Christian Strike, I think it's pronounced. But I think it was a little bit of gamesmanship from the manager as well.
There was some showmanship involved.
Yes,
for sure.
he very much. I wouldn't say he flopped because he did get hit.
It's a bit of a dive,
but he definitely made the most of him being getting struck in the shoulder by another.
He yelled "Ay Dios mío" as he fell.
he definitely
the arms
went out. If you got to see it in slow motion if you haven't seen this, but he is very.
Shouts to the camera people for Bundesliga who were all like "Swan." Everybody just
get over there. 120 frames per second.
Everybody. They had the drone overhead. They had all the angles
and this listen, look, we always say, and you know, really, being in Germany, we sort of were there obviously to like learn about what the league is like,
right?
And what these are the kind. We don't care about what the scores of the games or whatever,
buddy. No one's showing you highlights. This is what they're showing. This went viral. So as far as I'm concerned, maybe the next time you get close to a manager, throw a little elbow. Okay.
Okay.
Next thing you know, you're in Sports Center.
All right. You know, the not top 10 is just as good as the top 10. I'll be honest.
Buddy, you're on our top 10 already. And what'd you do? You did one thing. Somebody actually fight that eagle. Okay. And this is for Christian. You know?
So yeah, like in the next Premier League game, you know, Jurgen Klopp, Pep Guardiola, maybe a little too close to the ball. Yeah. All right,
there's no mush.
A little mush, Mike.
Get a little mush going. Just mush it, dude.
You know what? How many times has Pep Guardiola ever been mushed?
None.
Probably zero.
You saw how disrespectful he was to the officials.
To the official.
He came over with the very condescending, "Thank you very much. You guys are great at your job." Imagine one of those officials just reaches out. You don't even see his face. You just reach a hand out and mushes him.
Exactly.
Just get back to your
exactly.
center.
Premier League. We're making you all the money right now. This will be a good opportunity.
You thought your last TV contract was good. Wait till you see this one.
Okay, the Premier League games are going to be on pay-per-view going forward.
Dana White is going to show up.
Okay, yeah, but that was it was pretty ridiculous. I've never seen anything like that.
You know what? You don't see it very often.
Yeah, or where a player just absolutely takes out a manager.
Let's see what happens on Dusseldorf next, because we were there too. All right, Zach Steffen don't play there. He's going to go studs up.
Yeah, and I love that everybody was tweeting at us like, "Oh, the Cooligans, this is your fault.
Yeah.
Cooligans, go there once."
A lot of Frankfurt fans were like, "Is this what happens when you go somewhere?"
Please do not visit our club. We don't want any poops.
We were respectful.
No, we had a great time over there. So red carded. Not going to be playing the next game, but hopefully we learn from him.
Straight red, aka the gully card. You got it, buddy.
All right, we'll be right back.
Yeah, we're back. So when we were in Seattle for MLS Cup, we went as press, and sometimes we get invited to the press conference.
Correct.
And oftentimes when we're there, we're like, why are we here?
We feel a lot of place. We're not journalists, exactly. But
can't ask funny questions. We tried that, got in trouble once.
Yeah, it was. People were like, it was said
in no certain terms, like, "Yo, don't do that again." There's no reason.
It wasn't said, "Don't do that again." But when somebody says, "Why are you here?" it sort of intimates that
after you've asked the question. Hey, why are you here? That means they didn't enjoy the question.
But we did. With this time around, we were like, let's put our journalist hats on with a little ticket on there, and.
Mine's a snapback, in case anybody's wondering. Your boy keeps it gully.
So we did.
We asked questions. So I had a question about the CBA, the collective bargaining agreement.
And just so people know, this was this Don Garber State of the League, which he does before every MLS Cup. He basically says like a State of the Union address.
Right. Here's what happened this year. Here's what we're looking forward to. Every once in a while, a little bit of news is dropped or made. So everyone's asking some pretty good questions. You and I decided to ask a question. I leaned over and I said, "Yo, we should ask about the CBA." And you go, "Yeah, I got a question about that." And I was like, "Damn it. He's got a good question." So now I need to come up. So you asked the question, and people were like, "Oh," like you heard it. "Oh, okay."
Yeah, it was. But it was one of those like, "Oh, they're asking that." Like,
wow, look at them putting words together. And then I go to ask a question, and everyone's like, "Oh,
okay,
right,
here it comes.
Here comes the silly question." And I asked a question about the state of the league as far as their combination with Liga MX and what's coming up. I said that they were flirting with each other,
Yes.
And I was like, maybe
he did use the word in a publicly broadcasted. He's like, "Oh, you leagues are flirting with each other."
And I go, maybe it's not the right word, but you get what I'm saying, Don. I did say that. But then, so the question was answered, and he even said, "Oh, that's a great question." And then he answered it, right? And then you and I start getting messages from the other reporters in the room.
And people also watching. This is like live stream. This stuff. Yeah.
So we're getting messages from people not in the room and people in the room saying, "Whoa, you both asked good questions," which is also a bad reaction.
The one thing that's interesting, I asked the question about the CBA and where the league's confidence is in getting a deal done and avoiding a lockout.
Well, you said the players are unified, and he's like, the players should always be unified.
Yeah, this is what happens when you a lot of respect to journalists, because whenever you ask a question to any person in sports, they immediately get mad at you. They're like, we're here to ask questions, and they get mad at you that you're asking one.
They don't want you to ask a question about something that's happening. They want you to ask a question like, yo, weather's pretty good, right?
Yeah,
like,
they want small talk. But but it was like I very much felt like the MLS commissioner, Don Garber, was mad at me at that moment.
Like, if he could have answered the way he wanted to, he'd be like, psh, why you gotta ask me about that?
Why you gotta get all serious about this right now?
The lawyers are gonna wonder what I'm gonna say now. Everybody's nervous because of you.
Because it's a weird thing with contract negotiations, with collective bargaining and negotiating with a union, right? Because you sort of have to be this alpha. Yeah. And I noticed that very much. And like, hey man, I wasn't asking your dick size. You know what I mean? Like, it was like a very strange.
Show it, dude. And you didn't say that.
It had nothing to do with it, but it was just like he kind of alphaed me.
Yeah.
To be like, we're confident it's gonna be sorted out.
But he was like, of course the players are unified. They should be unified. Not nearly as unified as we are. He was like a very like, you want to hear something, bub? You know?
You realize how serious it really is when you have that conversation. It's just like.
Meanwhile, when I asked my question, I said that we're flirting. He started blushing. He was like, "Oh my God, did Liga MX say anything about me?"
I'm sorry, Don. I didn't mean to.
He was like, "Oh my God, were they saying like they're enjoying hanging out with us, or maybe we should take it to the next level?" It was very odd to hear. When we asked both questions, as the answer started, people started tippy-tapping, and those are journalists. You know they're sending tweets out or adding to articles, and we're like, yo, we're newsmakers. And we didn't have to, like, do anything stupid, you know? We didn't punch anyone.
Yeah. But it's good. I think we're This was our 4th MLS Cup, and I think we're getting more. Are we maturing into?
Well, no one asked us why we were there after.
So that's good.
So far,
they asked before when we requested press credentials.
You sure you should be here? I also love how like we're dressed in like tracksuits and hoodies, and everyone else is wearing suits. It's like, well, we're still gonna be ourselves.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We're never gonna conform to what you consider.
It feels weird to be in a suit in an MLS press conference.
Yeah,
I'll be honest.
Never trust a comedian in a suit. That's my rule.
Okay. Maybe we'll figure out why someday. Who knows? We'll be back with more after this.
We did it, everybody!
We did it again. Look at this. Crazy, huh?
You put cameras in front of us, we're going to give you an episode.
Sure. I mean, it could be a manic episode.
It could be. Sometimes it is. Doesn't it feel like one?
It could be a depressive one, too. No, thank you again for watching. We appreciate everyone.
And thank you to Pablo Maurer, man.
Pablo Maurer of The Athletic. Yes, again, subscribe to The Athletic. One of my favorite, pay journalism stuff.
Yeah. What a journey we all just went on.
You know what happened? At the end of these episodes, I run out of words.
Yeah. Only so many words in our brains, guys. It's like a gas tank. Also, our bodies have no clue what time it is or where we are. So Pablo's amazing. One of my favorite writers in all of soccer, American or not. So especially when he works with Paul Tenorio. Paul Tenorio is also incredible. The Athletic's got a great stable.
Great people out The Athletic. So again, make sure you give us a follow at Soccer Cooligans.
And join Gully Squad.
Join Gully Squad at Fubo Sports, and you can watch us do stand-up. We do stand-up as well, so you can
whatever
follow
you
us
want
as well. At not Alexis, at Chris Polanco. I just did it backwards. My name's Chris Polanco.
I'm Alex Guerreros.
Together, what are we? The Cooligans!